Well, I hope you folks want some good news. I got a little bit of it pertaining to the Golden State Warriors, and that involves their salary cap situation for the 2024-25 season. Apparently, I was misinformed. A lot of people were misinformed. I did the research myself. And again, not as bad as it looks. We'll break all that down. Going to discuss Andrew Wiggins and the season that was in terms of his splits, some interesting data there. And the folks over at The Athletic conducted a survey involving NBA players. Interesting results there. Interesting times. Interesting show. Let's get to it. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it is a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Threads at Dog Wild. I just posted all the figures that I talked about on last, and I got some hair sticking up on the side of my head here. Anyways, I digress. You can follow me on Threads again at Dog Wild. I posted all the net rating stats that we discussed in detail on Friday's show. Posted it all there in visual at Dog Wild. Super easy handle. The program's also available there at Locked On Warriors. Django, what's up? Yeah, the chat is open. We got a live show today. Hello to you and to everyone else watching the show, whether it's live, whether it's recorded. Happy Monday. The NBA playoffs in full swing. You know, Dub Nation, if you consider yourself a member of Dub Nation, you know, you might have been throwing some pity parties this year, and rightfully so. This was a rough season for a franchise, for an organization, and for a fan base accustomed to much loftier results. This was a bummer. But would you rather be in the Warriors' shoes, where you have some flexibility, where the future is kind of wide open, where there's some hope with all these young players who might be considerably improved from a year ago, not just marginally? Or would you rather be the Phoenix Suns, who have Bradley Beal? They owe him, what, $60 million a year for the next 3 years? Oh, by the way, he has a no trade clause in his contract. And you have Kevin Durant, who will turn 36 next year. Devin Booker, I don't even know what to make of him. I mean, I admire him as a player. He's phenomenal, but he can't be escaping the blame finger for what happened there, being swept, not winning a single game in the postseason. I think I'd take the Warriors. Oh, by the way, Jose, and again, the chat's open. Thank you for the kind words. You're coming to us from, I believe, the Dominican Republic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Just doing our best to make this a good program, and hopefully we satisfy everyone out there. But going back to the talking point of this postseason, the Phoenix Suns. Ooh, one of my closest friends in the world, one of my roommates in college, Christian Peterson. I'm calling you out, buddy. He's a Getty photographer in Arizona now. He loves the Suns. Yeah, your team's not looking good, bud. So things could be worse. And we have another Jose here, by the way, this time coming from Portugal. Hello to you as well. Thank you for the kind words. But the point is, things could be better. I would much rather be in the Warriors' shoes than in the Phoenix Suns' shoes right now. NBA Hall of Famer Rick Barry, he comes on this show regularly. I'm lucky. There's no other way to label it, to call him a friend. You know, and him and I started together as work colleagues. I was his executive producer back in our KNBR days when he had a show there for 5 years. Always stayed in touch. He's such a genuinely good human being, grossly misunderstood given what sometimes people say out there. Anyways, him and I do a show. It's on this app called Mic'd Up. We did a show yesterday, And we were talking about a lot of things. But chief among them was the fact that, if you're a Warriors fan, there is reason to be optimistic. There are like the Phoenix Sun situation is absurd. And so things could be a lot better. And Safe Haven writes, gotta say, losing a 1-game play-in sure does feel better than getting a 4-0 sweep. Absolutely right. But Jose, the reason why I brought up Rick Barry wasn't just to mention the show and to talk about the fact that we discussed the playoffs. But Jose from Portugal also writes, "Do you think the Warriors should make a move for KD?" And we were talking about that, like what a colossal mistake Kevin Durant made leaving the Warriors in the first place. And what always blows my mind, look at this thing, is imagine what would happen if Kevin Durant never looked at social media. The guy is so obsessed and cares so much about what other people think about him, what other people are saying about him. If you would just delete that damn Twitter app, or whatever people are calling it now, Twix, off his phone, if he did not listen to the outside noise, outside of maybe using it the way Stephen Curry and Klay and Dre do, which is for motivation, for fuel, they use the hatred to ignite a fire within them. Imagine if Kevin Durant shut that outside noise up, stayed with the Warriors. I mean, they won one title since he left, but what would that number have been instead? 2, 3? They're still contenders now. It is such a shame. It is such a shame. And Jose asked, is there a possibility of him coming back? Who knows? I don't know if the Warriors are going to, give everything up to bring him back. Again, he turns 36 next year. He's no longer, he's still a damn good basketball player, but you're not going to give up the farm for a player who's got a finite number of years remaining. But I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'd love to see Kevin Durant come back. But the Suns are in a quagmire. I mean, they're almost definitely going to fire Frank Vogel. They got to do something to exhibit consequences for such a disastrous, disappointing year. But regardless, yeah, I personally wouldn't mind Kevin Durant coming back. Whether that's a realistic possibility, I have no clue. I don't think that would actually. I don't think it is, but who knows? And traveling near Arquides, you bring up a great point in the chat. Hello, friend, and hello to everyone else, which is that the league has turned the page, and we are seeing, especially this postseason, the rise of the next generation. I mean, Kevin Durant got swept. LeBron's playing the Nuggets tonight. His Lakers will probably lose that game. The Warriors are out. Stephen Curry is certainly at an interesting, fascinating point of his career. Whereas you see players like Anthony Edwards, Nikola Jokic is still in his 20s, Luka Doncic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jason Tatum, who I believe is 26. I don't know how old Jalen Brunson is. I'm almost positive he's still in his 20s. Yes, the point is the next generation is here. But just to finish up, bringing up Rick's name, because again, we did a great show yesterday, and that episode will be on YouTube under Golden Days. That's a channel that separate channel I run. Yeah, Rick thinks there's still hope for the Warriors. I do too, and a chief reason for that is this stat, this graphic more specifically, that I've been showing on this program. And this was courtesy of ESPN, and more specifically, Bobby Marks, their cap expert, who published this graphic. And a lot of media members have been using this as a basis of reality, as a fact, when it is actually pretty misleading. I decided to just do some research myself about the Warriors cap situation. And I came to the realization that this is not correct. The Golden State Warriors, in terms of committed salary, are not at 174 million, like what was reported by ESPN. And I'm learning more and more as well that organization routinely gets it wrong with like actual facts that they're publishing. It's kind of crazy. So I know I'm not at a point where I have to do secondary research almost every time I get information from ESPN. But the point is, ESPN reported that the Warriors have $174 million in committed salary for next year. The salary cap is set at $171.3 million. So you could deduce from this that the Warriors, just with the current roster, are nearly $3 million over the cap. They're below the first apron, which is set at $178.7 million. They're considerably below the second apron, which is set at $189.6 million. Those aprons are important in terms of repercussions, losing the mid-level exception, the amount of your mid-level exception you can offer to free agents, punitive actions taken by the NBA. For example, Joe Lacob has brought up the fact that if the Warriors I believe are in the second apron again, they were in the second apron this past season. If you do it 2 out of 4 years, I think in 2032, if I read this correct, the Warriors would be unable to trade that year's draft pick as a result. And there's other punitive actions the NBA could take. So the team is focused on not crossing that second apron threshold. But I think they really just want to get as low as possible for a number of reasons. You finish as the 10th seed, and yet your overall team salary was the second highest when you include luxury tax penalties in the entire NBA, behind, I believe, just the Phoenix Suns. But the reality of this situation is that the Warriors don't have $174 million in committed salary. They have $144 million in committed salary. They calculated $30 million courtesy of Chris Paul's final year of his non-guaranteed contract into this calculation. So that $30 million is not committed unless the Warriors exercise that option. They have not done so yet. And my guess is they're not going to. And the big question is, why would you? Is Chris Paul worth $30 million? Is he worth going over the cap on his own when you've got questions about Klay Thompson coming back and you want to add some other free agents of your own? So the point is, right now, in reality, the Warriors are actually approximately $27 million under the cap. Now, Gary Payton II is due to make a little over $9 million next year. Wouldn't surprise me if they traded him or renegotiated his contract so he gets maybe, say, $12 million, but that's spaced out over 3 years. So he would get a little more money guaranteed overall, but it's spaced out so that instead of the Warriors having a cap hit of $9 million this year, now it would be 3 or 4. If Gary Payton II agrees to a more spread out deal like that gives him a little more guaranteed dollars, but lowers the cap hit for this season. Wouldn't surprise me if the team does something like that. But the point is, there is a strong possibility that the Golden State Warriors, provided Chris Paul doesn't come back, and if the offer given to Klay Thompson last year was 2 years, $48 million. I don't see how that goes up from a year ago. But if they stick to that number, and this time Klay says, sure, you're still under the cap. You don't have draft picks to worry about because the Warriors don't have a first rounder unless by some miraculous way they fall into the top 4, in which case they get to keep their first round pick, which, I mean, let's hope for that, but I'm not counting on it. The odds are very low. So they've got some wiggle room here. And look, they could decide we don't even want Klay. And if, I mean, that's a crazy scenario, but just follow along here for a second in this hypothetical. If they decide to move on from Klay, you have $27 million to just play with, to sign a free agent. That's fascinating. I thought that was fascinating. And it certainly is optimistic news. And it gives you some hope for the Warriors making some moves. So keep that optimism in mind. And here's another thing. And this is where I need to speak to someone who can answer this, because I don't know off the top of my head what the answer to this is. But let's say hypothetically, you come to terms with Klay Thompson. Let's say he agrees to his 2-year, $48 million contract that he refused a year ago. And then the Warriors pull that offer off the table during the regular season. Because of bird rights, in theory, you could still sign some players and then offer Klay Thompson something that may get you over the cap, but might keep you under, let's say, the second apron, so that you still have your mid-level, you're not being punished, and you could sign some other free agents while also keeping Klay. There are options for the Warriors. So be optimistic about that. Now, one huge question they have, and hello, Sports Talk Channel. So one critical decision they have to make this offseason regards Andrew Wiggins. who I'm going to discuss in just a moment, because his splits, a lot of people talked about how he had a better second half of the season, and he did. But was it that much better? Is it worth keeping him around? He's owed $26 million next year, $28 million the year after that, $30 million in the final year of his contract, which is a player option he was almost certainly going to exercise. We'll talk about his stats this next year and, in a lighthearted manner, debate whether or not the team should trade him. I mean, it's a legit question considering the logjam that exists at his position and the fact that the Warriors have other players on this roster who can do just as good of a job, if not better, for cheaper and for developmental purposes for the future. We'll discuss that and so much more after we give some love to our sponsors for today, which is, first up, Nissan. Look, I'm a former Pathfinder owner, so every time Nissan comes up, I always get a little kick out of talking about my former ride. I've got a book that I've been working on for almost 10 years. Hopefully it comes out someday. Writing is not fun. It's always when you're done writing that you just have that exuberant relief. But anyways, the point of me bringing that up is because part of my book is focused on the human psyche and our transition from riding horses for thousands of years to transforming to cars. And the fact that us as humans, like living things don't evolutionize overnight. So we've been so accustomed to having these living beings under us that we may or may not, I never owned a horse, may or may not have fallen in love with. And now we've, instead of a horse beneath us taking us everywhere, we've got our cars, our ride or dies. And again, part of my research is, and it's a tiny part of the book, but it's about our emotional connection to the cars we have and how similar they are to the love we once had for these living things that used to take us around. And my Nissan Pathfinder, I had that kind of love for him. I had a name and everything. And look, are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further because Nissan gives you that freedom? Do you ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. They've got the 2024 Nissan Rogue, which is perfect for city drives, great escapes, class exclusive Google built-in, is your always updating assistant to call on for almost anything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. And the newest 2024 Nissan Pathfinder has room for up to 8 in expansive cargo capacity and advanced available 4x4 capability. 4x4 is at the near the top of the list for what I need with my ride. And with the Pathfinder, you can adventure almost anywhere in the world you want with 284 horsepower and up to 6,000 pounds towing. When adventure calls, the Pathfinder is there to answer. So take the Nissan Rogue, the Nissan Pathfinder, or the Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. And today's episode is also brought to you by that super fun game, Monopoly Go, which is now available on all operating systems for your phones. And look, game off. We're pausing here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You've already talked about that. We've exhausted Monopoly Go, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. And Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends, to complete albums for bigger prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. And there's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on!
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Are you getting tired of all that volume and shouting and noise on Fox Sports or ESPN? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's hear from Andrew Wiggins. He was part of the exit interview process with the Golden State Warriors, where they had a bunch of players, their head coach, their GM, answering questions from the media. And Wiggins touched on the subject that I think everybody is thinking about with him. What happened this year? Let's hear from Andrew Wiggins when he was asked that question.
How would you best describe your individual season and your guys' season as a whole?
My season was not too good, not great. I feel like I started picking it up the second half of the season, but the first half wasn't too good. Team-wise, I feel like we were really good the second half of the season. We were figuring stuff out. But it's unfortunate that it, had to end this way.
What maybe changed or flipped in that second half, and what can maybe you take into the start of next season as well?
I feel like our defense started clicking. I feel like we can always score with anybody, but that defensive side, being connected, and even having the full squad together.
Yeah, and Andrew Wiggins splits. I'm going to break those down in just a minute because they were disappointing. I mean, the whole season was disappointing. You could say the last two seasons were a major disappointment for Andrew Wiggins. Disappearing acts, underachievements, inconsistency. I mean, the list goes on in terms of critiques for Andrew Wiggins, and rightfully so. We'll discuss in just a moment what those stats were. Was there any bright sides? I don't know. We'll discuss that after I give some love to our third sponsor and final sponsor for the day. And this is a new one. Well, I haven't talked about these folks in a little while, and that is DoorDash. Look, Mother's Day is just around the corner, and DoorDash has quietly become part of the very fabric of our society. If you live anywhere near decent restaurants, there's going to be plenty of days where you decide, nah, I'm good. I'm staying home. I want delivery. And I'm sure your parents, and especially your mom, feels the same way. So why not get her a gift that she's going to actually use and appreciate? Get a thoughtful gift she deserves with the convenience you need. Choose same-day delivery. Schedule a week ahead. You could order flowers. You could order gifts with DoorDash. So order now and get everything you need for Mother's Day on DoorDash. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. One more time, that promo code is locked on NBA, LOCKEDON NBA. Order using DoorDash today. Terms apply.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. For the everydayers, it looks like I'm not going to have time to get to the player survey results. I want to cut this off. So we'll save that for tomorrow's show. Again, Sam Gordon of the San Francisco Chronicle is going to join the program soon. Mark Jones, who you've been watching and listening to on ESPN, broadcasting games with Hubie Brown, he's going to join the program soon. I'm going to get a lot of guests this offseason. There's going to be a lot of fascinating shows. We've never gone into the offseason this early before, so we got to get a little creative in terms of the content. But stay tuned for that. Follow me on Threads at Dog Wild. I try to post interesting content there from time to time. But right now, the subject is Andrew Wiggins. And I have his splits up. Let's talk about his overall numbers first this last season. And again, second highest paid player in terms of overall contract, third highest paid player in terms of annual salary. Now second, given I highly doubt Klay is going to get the same make the same money he made a year ago, which was over $40 million. So at least as of right now, unless Chris Paul, that non-guaranteed team option gets exercised, highly doubt they do that. Side note, I think they should do that and then trade Paul so you get some assets back. But we'll talk about that another show. But Andrew Wiggins on the season averaged 27 minutes per game. He shot 45.3% from the field. That's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. He shot 35.8% from three, which is not great. Not bad, but not great. And that's going to be one of the only stats where his splits will show that number did improve drastically in the later months of the season. Shot 75% from the free throw line. It was good. It's not bad. 4.5 rebounds per game. And that to me is the area of his game where the team sorely needed him the most, and he didn't deliver. And you could raise a question of whether or not he was playing out of position. You know, people love going back to the 2022 season with Wiggins when he was the second best player on that Warriors team in that postseason. And a huge reason for that was his inside presence. All those tough boards he was grabbing, his post-up game, which has improved drastically from when he first came to the Warriors. But you could also make the argument that maybe his regression, besides whatever the hell is going on off the court that's causing him to miss time and making him distracted, it could just be that he's playing out of position. You know, I've said this before and I'll say it again. From my personal experience as a former player, the thing that drove me the most insane when it came to coaches was them asking me to play out of position. I was a guard. I was always on the smaller side. But sometimes I had a coach that would say, oh, you can grab rebounds. You can handle playing the four. No, I couldn't. And what are you going to do as a player? You can't just, be insubordinate. You have to say yes and go along with it. And that could be what's going on with Andrew Wiggins. The guy was a shooting guard for his entire career before he came to the Warriors. And yes, he improved his inside game tremendously. He could pass off being a three. The guy is not a power forward. The one season where he thrived in 2022, he was playing in a postseason where the opposition just really did not pose that much intimidation in the front court. The Mavericks had no one that scared Wiggins. The Celtics had virtually no one that scared Wiggins. And I don't even think the Memphis Grizzlies in the conference semis that year had anyone that posed a serious challenge at the four position. So Wiggins got away with it that stretch. But as anyone who watches basketball can see, the game has drastically changed from what it was in 2022, primarily based on size. The game, the league's gotten bigger. The Warriors' anomaly of their lights out, greatest shooting performances we've ever seen in the history of the game is over. And the norm has returned, which is size matters in the NBA. I personally wouldn't mind Wiggins if he played at the two. His three-point shooting is barely different than Klay Thompson's this past season. So it could be something as simple as that. Play him in his natural position. Maybe he will thrive. Expect him to be a power forward in this version of the NBA. And maybe you get a worn-out player who struggles. And I brought all this up because of the rebounding numbers. He averaged 4.5 rebounds per game this last season, which was, I think, 5th or 6th on the team. And again, ideally, you want more production from what Kerr expects from Wiggins. In reality, You don't need that from Wiggins. Like, that's never been his game. And so the 4.5 rebounds, less than what the Warriors need, considering how many minutes Wiggins gets and how much they relied on him. And again, on the season, and this was the most disappointing stat, 13.2 points per game. Eek. That's a really tough one. Andrew Wiggins, that 13.2 per game scoring average, easily the lowest of his career. The second lowest scoring average of Andrew Wiggins' career was 2014-15, his rookie season, when he averaged 16.9 points per game. Now, when you look at his splits, because people love doing that, especially the optimists in Dub Nation, February was his best month. Oh man, did I just delete the page that I needed? I did just do that. I apologize. This is where live programming can sometimes bite you in the arse. I got it back. Okay. So in the month of February, when Andrew Wiggins played 11 games that month, that was easily his best month. If he was able to replicate that for the entire season, while the points weren't there, he only averaged 13.5 points per game in February. He shot over 50% from the field. And the number that sticks out by far the most was his three-point shooting. He shot 47.5% from deep in the month of February. That number went down to 37% in March, 37.5% in the 6 games he played in April. The 6 games he played in April, he did average 17 points per game in 6 games, though. In March, he averaged 13.4. In February, 13.5. And again, his overall season scoring average, 13.2 points per game. That's just not enough. For your second highest paid player on your roster, you need to get production. So, and so his overall pre and post All-Star numbers, because a lot of people out there, especially Wiggins detractors and his fans, love to bring up the fact that post All-Star, it was an entirely different player. So let's break it down. Pre-All-Star, Wiggins averaged 12.5 points per game. Post-All-Star, when he was supposedly his older version, he averaged 14.7 points per game. Keep in mind, again, his career scoring low was, until entering the season, was his rookie season when he averaged 16.9 points per game. In the second half of this season, post-All-Star break, he averaged 14.7. That's not great. That's at best average. Not even average by his standards. By his standards, that's just bad. He averaged 4.9 rebounds per game after the All-Star break, 4.4 before. He shot 38.4% from 3 after the All-Star break, which is good. You can live with that. Pre-All-Star break, 34.2%. The only part of his game that, at least from my perspective, looked good in the second half of the season was his three-point shooting. And again, even then, 38.4%, it's all right. But, I mean, it's not exactly something to rave about. To put it in perspective, Klay Thompson on the year shot 38.7% from 3. So, me personally, if I'm the GM of this team and I'm looking at this roster, it's either Wiggins or Klay. I don't think you can live with those two together again for a second straight season. Remember, as a duo this year in terms of net rating, Wiggins and Klay dead last on the Warriors. Minus 89. Minus 89. Those two played 1,046 minutes together this season and were minus 89 as a duo in net rating. That's how much they got outscored this year. It's got to be either or as KM writes, both. Maybe. Touch of Madness writes, was he impactful? Subjective question. My answer, no, not at all. There were moments. A lot of people brought up his defense. I didn't see that either. The point is, bad year. I see no reason he's going to improve. But good news as we wrap up the show, Warriors got cap space. They've got nearly $30 million in cap space. So there's some optimism. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.